You're listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This is Josh Reeves, and I want to tell you about the midweek renewal service here at Mile High every Wednesday. It's all about spiritual practices. So we start with meditation at 6:40. There's a little talking, little music, some forgiveness practice, and then a prayer ritual as well. You're at home within an hour. A great way to spend and inspire yourself in the middle of the week.
Well, today we are continuing our adventures in faith. The last couple of weeks, Reverend Josh has tended the seeds of love, the seed of trust. And today we are focused on nurturing, growing, and tuning the seed of light in this moment. And so how wonderful it is to focus on light on the eve of Diwali, this beautiful Hindu festival of lights. And it's so much more than a festival, as Dr. Patty and Prince Rama was so wonderfully talking about this morning. It's about honoring the light within you. And to the extent that you honor the light within yourself is the extent with which you can honor the light in each other. And so we are focused on this deeper sense of peace that comes, this deeper sense of connection that comes when in the dark times of our life and in the dark times of our world, when we focus on the spiritual essence of the light. And did you know that each one of you is a sparkler? You could be a sparkler, and that when we connect with each other, we share those sparks with light with each other. So as you go about the rest of your day, imagine you're holding one of those beautiful 4th of July kind of sparklers, and you can tap them when you greet someone out in the lobby or around the campus. Happy Diwali to everyone who honors this festival. But today we explore even further what it means when we move into this present moment right now to recognize our own light. It's also one of our greatest challenges, isn't it? That how easy it is to focus on our failures, on the times that we've fallen down, the times that we haven't gotten it right, to celebrate our successes, to focus on the good and to raise and to praise the God light within us. How tough it is sometimes in a world of chaos, in a world of struggle, to remember to reach for the positive when sometimes it can feel as if everything is conspiring to pull us down, to dim our inner flame, and to train us to brace, protect, guard against, and withdraw from the onslaught of negativity that we can find in the world around us. And now I know for myself, when I begin to focus on what's wrong within me, then I begin to focus on what's wrong within those I love around me. And then I begin to focus on what's wrong in the world around me. And what happens is that I begin to create this super myopic and narrowed vision. And then away go the rose-colored glasses. And then it can feel as if I'm looking through windows that are clouded with dust of fear and doubt. Mark Nepo writes in his book, Drinking from the River of Light. He says, of the many windows that we have into life, it is through the window of our eyes that we take in the vastness of our experience. It is through the window of our mind that we take in the endless patterns that help us understand the web of life. And it's through the window of our heart that we feel the 1,000 ways we are affected by each other in life, the 1,000 ways that we touch each other. So it's imperative, he says, that we love our windows and we care for them. We tend to the windows of our perception. You know, he shares a story of how he once went to visit his 94-year-old grandmother. She was staying in a center in Brooklyn, New York, and he visited her room, and it was a gorgeous day as he went to visit her. And when he entered, she seemed kind of glum, so he asked her, what's the matter? And she said, "Oh, isn't it a shame? Today is such a gray day." And he thought, he wondered for a moment if she was quite lucid. And then he said, he began to look around the room to see what she meant. And he noticed that the only little tiny window in her room was covered in dirt and grime. So he said, Grandma, the window is dirty. We're going to have that cleaned. And he rolled her out into the sunshine of the courtyard. And she looked back at that caked window. And she said, with the knowing chuckle, he writes, of someone who's lived half a century, she said in her thick Jewish Russian accent, got a dirty eye? Then have a dirty world. Don't you just love that? We have to be in charge of cleansing the lens of our perception, the windows of our perception through our spiritual practices and our spiritual awareness so that we can look out on the world and see clearly the interconnectedness of life that moves through all things. Similarly, I recently read a book, there's a new one out by Dan Brown. He wrote the Da Vinci Code, and now he's written the book of Secrets. It's a fascinating book that asks many questions about the nuances of human consciousness. And his character in the book, noetic scientist, Dr. Catherine Solomon, reminds us that human perception is riddled with blind spots. She says, sometimes we are so busy looking in the wrong way that we don't see what is right before our eyes. And she shares an image in that book of the Hermann grid. Maybe you've seen it around the internet. If you take a look at that for just a moment, just glance up there and see if you notice what happens with your eyes when you look at that grid. It's fascinating. Fascinating, isn't it? Do you see those little black dots seem to move around on the grid depending on where you're looking? And they appear and they disappear depending on where you are focused. And what an example of how easily it is that our mind can fill with darkness or it can fill with light depending on where we place our focus in the world. So much of our spiritual life is about paying attention to the focus of our seeing. Our vibration, our very presence, our essence arises from our ability to recognize and to tend to the light within us so that we can perceive that same light everywhere around us. Like the Hermann grid, that light depends exactly on where we are looking. Meditation teacher Osho said, go inwards. Find your inner space, and suddenly you will find an explosion of light, beauty, an explosion of ecstasy, and it will be as if suddenly there are thousands of roses that have blossomed within you, and then you will be full of their fragrance. And I think that brings us to one of the first ways I'd like to look at this morning as to how we tend the inner light, our inner world, so that we can be filled with that essence of roses in our own awareness. And I like to refer to it as setting the inner dinner table of our mind. And, we can expend it by being intentional about the atmosphere we are creating both around us. When my daughters, Maya and Madeline, were little, we lucked out because I was a school psychologist in those days and I had the summers off, and wouldn't you know it, they both had summer birthdays. And so every single summer, we turned our summer into a birthday party summer camp that the three of us ran together. And we would select the birthday themes of the summer. One summer, we built a big pyramid, an Egyptian pyramid in the basement, and we had obstacle courses moving through. You had to save Queen You Laugh a Lot by telling jokes at the party and get her back to the Luxor Palace. One time we had an under the sea theme where there was seaweed all around. We had hot dogs in the shape of octopus, yeah, little hot dogs. And we had bubble machines, and we would create these fantastical birthday worlds together. it was in a way that we were creating our own spiritual practice of setting the atmosphere of our minds. You know, one year I'd like to involve all the parents in these parties, and I assigned them roles. I think there's a couple people here today that played a couple roles in these birthday parties. Alice in Wonderland's out there somewhere. That some of the parents would begin to argue over who got to be the smoking caterpillar or the Mad Hatter, you know. But they all played a role, and we all got together and we co-created these atmospheres of joy and celebration. And I share that because as a spiritual tool, we can set the themes of our mind. We can choose how we're going to create, how we're going to tend to those atmospheres of grace by our own thought choices. And I wonder, what theme have you been choosing as the atmosphere of your own mind? Who have been your dinner guests at that inner banquet at your mind table within? And the teachers, the practices, the thought patterns that you have invited recently to nourish your inner world. Who are you inviting to dinner inside your mind? And considering how you want to feel, how you want to show up in the world, what spiritual vision you're holding right now for your life, what healing you're calling in. Who are those masters, of those spiritual teachers that you would bring on board to help you raise positive thoughts, to encourage you, to cheer you on, to remind you of spiritual truths? When those times of darkness, or when you start to feel like you're losing faith in the journey, who can help you stand and face the fires of the world? You know, this week I found myself in one of those doubt fires. I was wrestling with, you have some of those old hamster wheel thoughts, patterns of behavior that come up again and again until we learn the lesson that they're bringing. And I was on one of those hamster wheels. And when I get on one of those hamster wheels, you know, the thoughts that start to come to the forefront are, oh my gosh, this is impossible. This is never going to change, Zemirah. Are you ever going to get the handle of this new way of thinking? How do we gain this momentum to really step ahead? And I can really start to get that going. And about that time, my dear loving partner, Andrew, brought me a video of Louise Hay. Louise Hay, religious science practitioner, one of the women that is responsible for many of the New Thought books that each of us read or have read in the past. And it was a video. I immediately set her a place at the inner dinner table of my mind, because you know what she was saying on the Tonight Show of all places? She said, when a problem comes up, one of the best things to say is all is well and everything is working out as it should, working out for my highest good. And out of this situation, she says, this so-called problem, only good will come. And I am safe. And she said, this is so powerful because it quiets your mind down long enough so that the universe, so spirit, can begin to bring and find a solution to this so-called problem that has been tormenting and turning around in your life. This simple affirmation this week became a light for my world. Esther Hicks, another one of the dinner guests that I've had at the table this week, she said, if you think a thought long enough, it becomes a habit of thought, and eventually it will turn into a belief. So I encourage us all to be mindful of who we're inviting to dinner, the inner dinner tables. Imagine that you're setting a banquet for your spiritual masters, for those who help you and hold your hand when the going gets rough, for those who encourage you and whisper in your ear, and saturate your atmosphere with reminders. Sticky note your mirrors. Yeah, you've all heard that before, but it works. Sticky note your mirror. You know, listen to a podcast in your car, you know, that's going to uplift you. You know who I like? Joel Osteen. I love his Texas accent, and he just gets me in there. He says, okay, do not let that stuff get in your mind. You can do this. You've got this. You're changing. And I'm like, yes, Joel, I am. Thank you. And I start to feel all inspired and back on my positivity horse after listening to him. But begin to find ways, just as if you were setting the table for your closest friends, to invite these things into these teachers, these thoughts into your life. And if you're stuck, then open up and ask God to send the invitations. And then wait and see what starts to show up in your life, what comes along. And so that brings us to our second way this morning, which is to choose to nourish the good within yourself, within others, by the power of your own focus. We live in an age of relentless distraction. And the digital age is here to stay, I believe, for the time being. And attention then becomes our greatest currency, our most precious currency. But beyond the digital noise that is coming from every direction, it's often our past that is competing most fiercely for our focus. It's those patterns, those failures, that generational trauma, the generational addictions, those generational wounds, those things that, those voices in your family that say, it's never going to change. This is how we are. This is how it's always been. This is what we do. Those things that come in and threaten to obscure our inner light. And what I want to say is that the light of God, being the truth of who we are, spiritual practice can bring that very truth to the forefront and the focus. In my spiritual practices class, we've been talking about 2 ways specifically to let go of the past, released past resentments. And the first one is forgiveness, and bring our attention into the present moment, and that is meditation. And if you pair those 2 practices together and make them become friends in your spiritual practice, then you have this way to let go of what has been and move into now, so that you can then rehearse what the people at your inner dinner table are telling you. Our upcoming Dia de los Muertos service, All Saints' Day, is also one of the world traditions that honors our ancestors. It's the sacred time where people gather around the world to honor the path of the ancestors, to place candles at the altars in honor that the very fact that we're here today is because someone walked before us. And to celebrate both their challenges and their triumphs, because it's both and that brought us to where we are right now. In Matthew 6:22, it says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be filled with light. Ernest Holmes expands on that. He says, if our eye is single, we will be filled with light. And when we perceive the unity of good, we shall perceive it in its entirety. This is the practice of singularity of sight, focusing unwaveringly on the divine, nourishing the good within ourselves, nourishing the good in one another. Oh, what a blessing it is when you begin to nourish the good within yourself and have that extra to nourish the good in one another, and to watch how relationships transform, how they are uplifted by the light when you start to recognize and uplift it in those that you love. But first starting and uplifting within yourself so that you can then share it with those that you love. Feeding the light within and around us. Abenaki elder Joseph Bruchak says, a friend is a person you tell your true name. And I would say a true friend, I believe, is one who can say it back to you when you forget. And that is what we are all here in community to do for one another, is to reflect the light of who we truly are, and to recognize that we are all beings of light. Which brings me to the final talking point, which is the light between us and sensing more than meets the eye. We deepen our awareness of the light by opening to the mystery and realizing that divine radiance is the very truth that flows not only within us, but through us and all around us. I want you to travel with me for just a moment. Recently, I had an opportunity, and there's some beloved pilgrims here with me in the room today. We went to Scotland on pilgrimage. And we were able to walk the lands and to commune together and do spiritual practice in the lands of Scotland. But I want you all to travel with me for just a moment to the Lammermuir Hills of southeastern Scotland in the 7th century. These were the days before electric light, when the starry skies were vast and unobstructed above the earth. And one night, a young shepherd named Saint Cuthbert was out there on the fields with his sheep, and he looked up and he prayed, and he saw a stream of light moving, descending through the sky, and what appeared to be angels escorting a radiant soul upward. The next morning, he learned that Saint Aidan, of the Bishop of Lindisfarne, had passed away at that very hour. And Cuthbert took that vision as a sign to join the monastery. And indeed, the light of Aidan's ministry continued on through him. The torch of love and the torch of service passed from one soul to another that evening. Light recognizing light. And centuries later, we were all pilgrims standing on this holy ground of the Isle of Lindisfarne. And we gathered together on that Sunday morning to celebrate service under the rainbow arch of Lindisfarne Abbey, the ruins of Lindisfarne Abbey, that very day. And we told that story. We shared that story. And I have to tell you, that night at 3 o'clock in the morning, my eyes just opened. I wasn't woken by anything. I didn't have any need to wake up. My eyes opened, and it had been a stormy night. And I looked out the window of my hotel room, and there over the sea was the Big Dipper. And I thought to myself, we need to take a picture. We got to capture the Big Dipper. So I got out of bed, and I went over, and I snapped a picture of the Big Dipper. And I came back, and I laid it down on the bedside table. And as I was getting into bed, I thought, what in the world? It was filled with gorgeous, beautiful illuminations of the northern lights that were filling the sky all around me. Well, I didn't get into bed. I picked up my camera, I rushed back over the window, and I spent the next 15 minutes taking pictures all around the sky. If I could just squint a little bit, my naked eye could pick up the little bit of the northern lights all around. And in awe, in that moment, I saw a shooting star come all the way down the sky, and I felt those God bumps all over me. And I felt in awe of all the light that is around us at all times that I'm unable to see, but is always there. The chaotic order of the cosmos, the hidden harmonies beneath the noise, the seemingly harmony beneath the seemingly mess of living, all of it interconnected with light, speaking a language that is much older than our words. The seen and the unseen, the visible and the invisible, the known and the mysterious, this great conversation of the cosmos. Mystics across tradition have known this. In the Rig Veda, light is the illuminating active force known as Satya, and it can only be described as shining truth. In the Gospel of John, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and that Word gave life to everything, and life was the light of all people. And in Tibetan Buddhism, momentary experiences of enlightenment are seen as glimpses of clear light. Even the moment of death is known as the clear light, purity of mind. When the northern lights dance, the earth and the sun are in conversation together. dialogue of particles and color, dancing, energy, and grace. The eyes of your beloved ones shine that light, reflect it back to you as well. Lisa Mueller, poet Lisa Mueller said, "The world is flux, and light becomes what it touches." To live in the awareness of that truth is to understand that nothing holds us apart. Lisa Mueller is a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet who fled Nazi Germany at the age of 13 and lived the rest of her time here in the United States. And she wrote a poem called Monet Refuses the Operation. And it talks about the story of the artist Monet, who was arguing with his doctor over cataract surgery. And this is what he said. "Doctor, you say there are no halos around the streetlights of Paris. And what I see is an aberration caused by old age and affliction. I tell you, it has taken me my whole life to arrive at the vision of gas lamps as angels, to soften and blur and finally banish the edges that you regret I don't see. To learn that the line I called the horizon does not exist, and sky and water for so long apart are the same state of being. 54 years before I could see Rouen Cathedral is built of parallel shafts of sun. And now you want to restore my youthful errors, fixed notions of top and down, illusions of this three-dimensional space, wisteria separate from the bridge that it covers? What can I say to convince you the houses of Parliament dissolve night after night to become the fluid dream of the Thames? I will not return to a universe of objects that don't know each other. As if islands were not the lost children of one great continent. The world is flux, and light becomes what it touches, becomes water. Lilies on water, above and below water, becomes lilac and mauve and yellow and white and cerulean lamps, small fists, passing sunlight so quickly to one another that it would take long, streaming hair inside my brush to catch it, to paint the speed of light. Our weighted shapes, these verticals, burn to mix with air and change our bones, skin, clothes to gases. Doctor, if only you could see how heaven pulls the earth into its arms and how infinitely the heart expands to claim this world. Blue vapor without end. Monet understood what it meant to see with the eyes of the heart is to see the divine radiance in everything. The blurred edges, the merging colors, the shimmering unity of being. And it is my prayer today that you clean the windows of your perception and set the inner dinner table of your mind with luminous thoughts and open your eyes to the web of connection that holds it all. Let's pray. Feeling the infinite presence of light that is right here, recognizing it right where we are, right here in this moment. That each one of us opens to feel and to touch that light that is always present in our life. That inner light, that inner flame. That inner flame of the divine that is eternal, and that is always guiding our way forward. Oh, it's with such gratitude this morning. I know that as we cleanse our perception, we open to the greater light that interconnects all things. This web of light that is the unity of good, that is the root of all that is. And so I know that this morning that the light that we share together here, it banishes any fear. It pushes aside any dust of worry. It allows us to open greater and deeper into a door of awareness that God is all there is. And so I give thanks to feel and to know that that is the very truth of our being. That is the very truth of each one of us here. May each walk this week draw us deeper into that awareness of the light, to illuminate our hearts so that we may reflect light to one another. I say thank you, Spirit, and release this prayer. And so it is.
Thanks for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. To make a donation, please visit milehighchurch.org.